From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I am Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. An American court has dismissed a lawsuit that targeted activists who supported the Palestinian-led Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions, or BDS movement against Israel. The BDS movement aims to combat Israeli occupation and human rights abuses against Palestinians through non-violent means. Last Thursday, the Superior Court for the District of Columbia also dropped all 10 charges against the defendants in the case. The ruling is seen as a victory for advocates of justice and freedom in Palestine, as it sends a clear message against the suppression of dissenting voices. Expressing relief, Stephen Saleta, a Palestinian-American academic, said he hoped the ruling will discourage pro-Israel groups from harassing and defaming individuals who support the Palestinian cause. His attorney, Asta Sharma Pokaral, denounced attempts to suppress this type of advocacy through abuse of the legal system. The lawsuit stems from a 2013 resolution sponsored by the American Studies Association. It advocated the boycott of Israeli academic institutions as part of the BDS movement. After the first lawsuit was dismissed in 2019, the petitioners filed another lawsuit in the U.S. Supreme Court. The nation's highest court concluded that the 2013 resolution fell within the realm of public interest and advocated for the right to free speech. It also recognized the importance of the resolution for the safety and freedom of foreign scholars working on relevant issues without fear of persecution. A U.S. government watchdog has asked District Judge Eileen Cannon to recuse herself from the hearing in former President Donald Trump's case. The group Free Speech for the People, or FSFP, cites previous rulings by the judge on the matter. Cannon had ordered the Justice Department to halt its investigation into the secret documents found at Trump's Florida estate. FSFP demanded that Cannon either recuse herself or be removed from the case altogether. In a letter to Chief Judge of the Southern District of Florida, Cecilia Altonaga, they accused Judge Cannon of miscarriage of justice and extreme bias. The FSFP's letter comes less than a week after Trump, who is running for re-election in 2024, was indicted on charges including willful withholding of national defense information. Trump was also charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and concealing documents in a federal investigation. History books say that Asians did not arrive in America until the 19th century, but new research has found that they reached Oregon as early as 1587. And their descendants have remained in America ever since. According to Diego Javier Luises, assistant professor of history at Tufts College in Massachusetts, Spanish navigator Sebastián Vizcaíno had at least 7 people from Asia with him. One of the 7 names, Anton Tomas, was from Malabar in India. The region is part of the southernmost Indian state of Kerala on the coast of the Arabian Sea. This region had historical ties with the Arab world before the advent of Islam and has one of the earliest mosques built during the Prophet Muhammad's lifetime. Tomas is said to have worked as a diver, risking life to plug underwater leaks. Luises is author of the forthcoming book, The First Asians in the Americas, a Trans-Pacific History, which will be on sale in 2024. A progressive watchdog group has revealed that several major consumer goods companies are using their pricing power to raise costs for consumers. Accountable.us has expressed concern about this, calling it an epidemic. Liz Zelnick, spokeswoman for the group, stressed that Congress must take serious action to address the problem. According to a recent report by the group, executives at leading publicly traded companies in the U.S. openly admit to using their pricing power. This strategy is aimed at boosting sales and profits, which are then distributed to wealthy shareholders. Accountable.us cited executives from prominent companies such as Kimberly-Clark, PepsiCo, General Mills, and Tyson Foods to substantiate its findings. Kimberly-Clark, known for its consumer products such as toilet paper and diapers, reported a 6.3% year-over-year increase in net income for fiscal year 2022, totaling nearly $2 billion. The company's shareholders were rewarded with $1.7 billion through share repurchases and dividends. The New York Times reported last month that despite the decline in prices of major commodities, many large companies continue to raise their prices rapidly. As a result, corporate profits in the U.S. reached record levels in the first quarter of 2023, according to recent data. The U.S. government has quietly started negotiations with Iran to secure the release of 3 American prisoners and curb Tehran's nuclear program. According to a report in the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday, the U.S. has approved the release of $2.7 billion held by Iraq for Iranian electricity and gas imports. The funds were previously frozen due to economic sanctions on Iran imposed by Washington. The move signals that both sides are closer to discussions. On Tuesday, State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said President Joe Biden is committed to ensuring that Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. It was also reported that White House officials have made at least 3 visits to Oman for additional indirect contacts with Iran. Omani officials have played a role in conveying messages between the two parties. Rights group to screen BBC documentary on Modi. Details after the break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. 2 days before Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Washington next week, 2 human rights groups will be screening a BBC documentary critical of the leader. The film India, the Modi Question looks at his leadership during the 2002 anti-Muslim riots in the western Indian state of Gujarat. Modi was chief minister of the state at the time. Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International have scheduled the private screening for June 20th in Washington. They have invited policymakers, journalists, and analysts to attend. Human Rights Watch said it was doing so to remind people that the documentary had been banned in India. More than 2,000 people were killed in the riots, most of them Muslims. Modi has denied accusations that he did not do enough to prevent the riots. The Indian government reacted angrily to the BBC documentary, which was released in January. The government blocked the distribution of excerpts of the film on social media and censored its broadcast. The White House last month defended Modi's planned state visit when asked about the human rights situation in India. Rights groups say minorities, dissidents, and journalists are being targeted under Modi's ruling Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party. The UN has accused authorities in Burma of paralyzing life-saving assistance to areas of the country devastated by Cyclone Mocha last month. Jens Laerke is spokesperson for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. On Tuesday, he urged Burma's military rulers to allow aid workers to distribute and transport assistance. This was after the government revoked their travel authorizations. The workers had been reaching a number of people using the limited authorizations granted by Burmese authorities. Laerke said almost 110,000 people received shelter and other assistance materials because of this. The UN was also allowed to send food assistance to nearly 300,000 individuals in Rakhine State alone. Laerke called the revocation a devastating setback for more than 1 million people. UN resident and humanitarian coordinator Ramanathan Balakrishnan has warned of a food crisis and epidemic of waterborne diseases as a result of the blockade. Saudi Arabia will co-chair a conference to provide humanitarian response to the conflict-torn Sudan next week. On Tuesday, the Saudi Foreign Ministry said the high-level conference will be held on June 19th to pledge support for humanitarian response in Sudan and the region. It will be jointly led by Qatar, Egypt, Germany, and the United Nations, in addition to the European Union and other UN agencies. Sudan has been ravaged by military clashes between the army and the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group since mid-April. More than 1,000 people have been killed and thousands injured in the violence. The UN estimates that over 1 million residents have been displaced and more than 800,000 have sought shelter in rural areas and other states. Another 250,000 have crossed Sudan's borders. The UN's World Food Programme has announced it will cut food aid to Syria, saying there are insufficient funds. Ken Crossley, the WFP's representative in the country, said aid would go to the most vulnerable populations. The agency will reduce aid to 2.5 million Syrians who rely on the organization for their daily subsistence. Overall, more than 5 million Syrians are dependent on aid. Officials said that if assistance to all of them continued, the organization's food stocks would be exhausted in October. Syria has been struggling for 12 years with a devastating war that has claimed the lives of more than 500,000 people and displaced millions more. In February, the country was hit by a series of earthquakes that worsened the plight of more than 12 million Syrians who are already suffering from hunger. Rising fuel and food costs have made it impossible to continue supporting the same number of people, despite efforts to gradually reduce rations. Muslims in a northern Indian town have been forced to leave their homes and abandon their livelihoods following a warning by an extremist Hindu group. According to reports, about a dozen families have fled Purola, a small town in the northern Indian district of Uttarkashi in Uttarakhand state. Notices were posted on their houses and stores asking them to leave the town. Fearing for the safety of his family, even a Muslim leader of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party was forced to leave his home. Muhammad Zahid, who is district chairman of the minority cell of the ruling BJP, was the owner of a clothing store. As reported by the Indian news website The Quint, he was forced to leave his home and business on June 7th. He told the news website that one could imagine the extent of the threat because despite being a leader of the BJP, he too had to flee for safety. Communal tensions flared when two youths were caught with a minor girl in the city on May 26th. At the time, it was said that the boys were Muslims and had kidnapped the Hindu girl. However, it later emerged that one of the boys was Hindu. In response, protesters smashed stores belonging to the Muslim community and forced them to lower their shutters. According to reports, the local administration watched as vandals destroyed stores, pasted posters, and threatened people to leave Purola. Posters were put up on these stores in the name of the Hindu Raksha Abhiyan, asking them to leave Purola by June 15th. The UN has announced it will repatriate 60 Tanzanian peacekeepers from the Central African Republic due to new allegations of sexual abuse and exploitation. The UN's multi-dimensional integrated stabilization mission in the Central African Republic disclosed that 11 Tanzanian soldiers were accused of sexually abusing and exploiting 4 victims. It is believed that some of the victims may have been minors at the time. Tanzanian troops face similar accusations of abuse and paternity cases in the Democratic Republic of the Congo back in 2016. Since 2013, over 100 women and children have come forward with accusations of sexual abuse by peacekeepers in the Central African Republic. The threat that the war between Russia and Ukraine is turning into a nuclear flashpoint is quickly becoming a reality. Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened to use depleted uranium, which causes birth defects, miscarriages, and cancer from radiation, in addition to fatalities. Earlier reports indicated that the U.S. was equipping the Ukrainian army with military weapons containing depleted uranium for its main battle tanks. Ukrainian forces recently launched a major counteroffensive against Russian troops along a broad front in the east and south of the country. The offensive is seen as a decisive operation to decide the future of the region. In February, a senior British defense official had also announced plans to supply military weapons with depleted uranium to Ukraine. Russia has warned that it would consider the use of such weapons an act of nuclear war. Putin said Tuesday that his country also has many such weapons and reserves the right to use them if Ukraine is supplied with such munitions. Before we end today's news, I'd like to make a special request. It takes our team a combined 55 hours of work daily to produce this news for you. It is news with a unique perspective, and you will find it only here. Sound Vision is the not-for-profit organization which produces it, and like PBS and NPR, it depends on your donations. Please visit MuslimNetwork.tv to donate now, or click on the link below to donate. Thank you. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit MuslimNetwork.tv. Salam and good night.